Every time you raise the bar, you expand your views of what's possible. Not because you suddenly become a different person, but because you discover that you are more capable of doing more all along. And sometimes the biggest thing that changes isn't what you accomplish, but it's what you believe about yourself. Hello, and welcome to Alive Soul podcast, where we explore personal growth, high performance, and intentional living. I'm Dr. Wasim Bellani, and I believe that life isn't just about going through the day, it's about becoming fully alive in everything we do. Through my journey as a doctor and heart rhythm cardiologist, and then through my exercise journey in cycling and running, and later in personal development and growth journey, I've learned that success isn't just about reaching goals, but about who we become along the way. This podcast is here to inspire and challenge you to push your limits, cultivate your discipline, and live with purpose. Join me each week as we dive into ideas, reflections, and practical strategies to help you grow into your best self. So let's get started. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Alive Soul podcast. Last week we talked about lowering our expectations. Not lowering our expectations for ourselves, but lowering our expectations of life sometimes. Because when we expect everything to go exactly as planned, we often end up getting frustrated, and that can steal our joy. But when we learn to appreciate what we already have, instead of constantly expecting more, we usually find more gratitude, more peace, and often more joy. And as I was thinking about last week's episode, I realized something. While there are times where we should lower our expectations of life, I think there is one place where we should do the opposite, where we should keep raising the bar, not for other people, but for ourselves. And I think all of us, myself included, can slowly become comfortable with the person we've become. It doesn't happen overnight. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides they're going to stop growing. It happens gradually. Life becomes familiar. We settle into our routines. We go to work, come back home, take care of our responsibilities, and before we know it, our days begins to look very similar. And there's nothing wrong with routine. In fact, routines are important. But sometimes along the way, routine can quietly become like an autopilot. We stop looking for new challenges. We stop learning new things. We stop asking ourselves what else we're capable of becoming. Without realizing it, we settle into a version of ourselves that feels good enough. We tell ourselves, I'm doing okay. And maybe we are. But every once in a while, I think it's worth asking ourselves a deeper question. Am I really doing okay? Or have I simply become comfortable with the person I've become? Because I don't think most people suddenly give up on growth. I think many of us simply drift into comfort. And maybe there is still something more in us. Now, as we were talking about raising the bar, I realized that phrase actually comes from the sport of high jump, where every time an athlete clears the bar, it's raised a little higher. Because if the bar stayed at the same height forever, they could keep succeeding, but they could never become a better athlete. And I think life works the same way. Because growth really happens when everything stays comfortable. It happens when we challenge ourselves just a little beyond where we are today. And raising the bar doesn't mean changing your whole life overnight. And it doesn't require a complete life overhaul. It just means stretching yourself a little bit and growing to your better self every day. Maybe you could read 10 pages of a book instead of spending another 30 minutes scrolling on your phone. Maybe you go for that walk even though you don't feel like it. Maybe calling a friend to check on him. Or maybe taking the first step to apologize to someone even when you don't feel it's all your fault. Maybe it's putting your phone away and giving your child your full attention. Maybe it's helping someone without expecting anything in return. None of those choices seems remarkable by themselves, but over time, they are the choices that shapes the person you are becoming. And that's how growth is. Not dramatic, it's simply choosing to stretch yourself a little more than yesterday. And when I think about raising the bar, I immediately think about my own running and cycling journey. If someone told me a few years ago that one day I could ride 100 miles on a bicycle or I could complete running a marathon, I probably would think that's all crazy. Because I didn't begin this journey with a marathon or a century ride in mind. I simply kept raising the bar. I'd finish one ride and think, maybe next time I'll go a little further. And then I'd do it again and again. The same thing happened with running. I wasn't thinking about running a marathon right away. But every time I run a distance, I tell myself I'm gonna run further next time, and further up till I got to the marathon. And every time I was just trying to become a little stronger than I was the week before. And looking back, I think the biggest change wasn't that I could run further or ride longer. I think the biggest change was what I believed I was capable of. And I think that's true in every area of our life. The same thing happens when you finally have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding and realize that wasn't nearly as scary as I was imagining. Or when you volunteer for a project at work that feels beyond your comfort zone, and afterward you wonder why you doubted yourself in the first place. Or when you start a habit that once seemed impossible, like waking up earlier, exercising constantly, or reading every day, and a few months later, it simply becomes part of who you are. And every time you raise the bar, you expand your views of what's possible. Not because you suddenly become a different person, but because you discover that you are more capable of doing more all along. And sometimes the biggest thing that changes isn't what you accomplish, but it's what you believe about yourself. Now, one thing I've learned that raising the bar has very little to do with comparing yourself to other people. Because there will always be someone who can run faster, or someone who earns more, who knows more, or achieves more. If we measure ourselves against everyone else, we'll either become discouraged because we're always behind, or become proud because we're ahead. And neither one helps us grow. But the comparison that helped me the most is much simpler. And that is, am I becoming a little better than I used to be? Am I becoming a little more patient than I was last year? A little healthier? A little kinder? A little more disciplined? And that's the comparison that leads to growth. Because the only person I want to be better than is the person I was yesterday. And here's another thought I've been reflecting on, which is how easy it is to settle for doing the bare minimum. Just enough to get by. Just enough to check the box. Just enough because nobody is expecting anything more. But what if we lived differently? What if once in a while we choose the extra mile? Not because someone would notice, not because we would receive an award, but because every small decision is shaping the kind of person we are becoming. That extra mile for you, maybe it's about staying 5 extra minutes to help a colleague. Maybe it's giving your family your full attention instead of your leftover attention. Maybe it's cleaning something that is not your responsibility. Maybe it's exercising when you'd rather sit on the couch. Maybe it's stopping to move something dangerous off the road instead of assuming someone else will do it. Those moments seem insignificant, but I don't think they're really about the action. They are about the identity. Because every time we choose that extra mile, we're quietly raising the bar for ourselves. Now, I also think that there is an important balance. Because if the bar is too low, we'll never grow. But if we place it too high that it's impossible to reach, we will eventually become discouraged. Because the goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. That bar should stretch us, not crush us. And most of the time, we don't raise it by making giant leaps. We raise it a little at a time. One habit, one challenge, one step forward. And that's how real growth happens. Now, when I also think about raising the bar, or raising my standards for myself, one thing that motivates me personally is connecting to my faith. Because I believe there will come a day when I look back at the life I lived, And I hope I won't be thinking, I know I had more to give. Instead, I hope I'll be grateful that I kept trying, that I kept growing, that I chose courage over comfort, that I didn't always choose the easy path, and that I didn't just settle for the smaller version of myself. Whatever your beliefs are, I think most of us wants to reach the end of our life knowing that we didn't simply exist. We didn't simply go through the motions, but instead we reached the potential we were capable of. So this week, I want to leave you with a simple challenge. Find one area of your life where you can raise the bar. It doesn't have to be something big. Maybe it's a habit you've been meaning to build. Maybe it's a relationship that deserves more of your attention. Or a conversation you've been putting off. Ask yourself one question. Where have I settled? Where have I lowered the bar? Not to make yourself feel guilty, but to remind yourself that there is still more growth ahead. Choose one area, just one, and raise the bar a little. Read a few more pages. Walk a little further. Spend a little more time with your family. Pray with a little more presence. Help one more person. Say one more kind word. And remember, every habit you build, every effort you make, it all adds up. So keep showing up. Keep raising the bar, because the small steps you take today are shaping the person you become tomorrow.